Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
This morning, we are going to both look at text, and we're going to study some texts from, once again, a couple outside of the 5 books. Don't get too excited. And we are also going to do a bit of meta study. So today it's on 2 levels. One is the material we're actually going to look at, but the other thing this is an opportunity to do is to look at how we have studied Torah and these texts over millennia. And so this is both what we're going to learn together, the actual material, and I want you to always be thinking, and I'll point it out, obviously, this is how the rabbis have read Torah as a love story between God and the people Israel, and reading into every single comma, not that there are commas in the Torah, but, reading into every tiny whatever. So we're going to spend our morning with one word of Torah. We're going to look at words around it, obviously, because it doesn't make a lot of sense, just one word. So we'll look at words around it, but we're going to look at the appearance of one word in Torah in 3 different texts and bring in a 4th midrash that reads this word into the Torah. And this really is how Judaism formed around texts and formed meaning around times of the year and times of our people's history. All right. We are coming up on the holiday of Tisha B'Av. So in the summer, we have Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which is the day that we commemorate a lot of different kinds of tragic events that befell the Jewish people. So from the walls of Jerusalem being breached to the destruction of the temple to there's all kinds of things, the Jews being taken from the Warsaw Ghetto to Treblinka. So there's a lot of things that get put on the 9th of Av. It's a mournful, sad time for us as a people. And on the 9th of Av, on Tisha B'Av, we read Lamentations. Lamentations, right, is ascribed to Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah. Lamentations is the book written in the wake of the destruction of Jerusalem. It is a heartbreaking text, really heartbreaking. And it's always been a part of my awareness. I do have to say, post burning down of the Palisades, it resonated a little differently. I do have to say. One of my favorite texts, not favorite because it's happy, but poignant, beautiful texts. One of my favorites comes from Echa, comes from Lamentations. And it talks, and the Midrash picks up on Lamentations and talks about the Shekhinah, the divine presence. It took her 10 stages of withdrawal to leave Jerusalem. So first she leaves the Holy of Holies, then she leaves the temple, then she leaves the temple courtyard, then she leaves the city of Jerusalem. So it's just about her pulling further and further away from, as the Torah describes it, her children, and her longing for her children, the people Israel. So this really poignant set of texts by the rabbis in the wake of the destruction, complete devastation, right? So remember, Jerusalem stone has a lot of oxygen in it. So when they set Jerusalem on fire, that oxygen heated up and exploded. So Jerusalem was not just burned to the ground. Jerusalem was blown up. It's the ancient technology to blow it up. So if you imagine war today and how we blow stuff up, that's what happened to Jerusalem. Okay. So that's the somber kind of tone that we have coming up on Tisha B'Av. We always read Parshat Devarim, the beginning of the book of Devarim. We always read it the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av. Now, why do I say that? You might go, okay, duh, that's not such a big deal, whatever. But remember, the Parshiyot move around on the calendar, right? If Passover is here, we read that and not the regular lectionary. We read the reading for Passover on the Shabbat of Passover. We read the Shabbat of Sukkot. We read that, not where we are in the Torah. If there's a leap year, we add a month. right? And we add 4 Shabbatot, so we have to divide the portions that we read together normally. Still, The rabbis figured out how to read Deuteronomy 1 before Tisha B'Av, the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av. I don't understand how, but there you go. Man, magic. So we're going to look at the text that we read always before Tisha B'Av. Here's the meta learning I want us to do. Since this has always been the case, the rabbis always read Deuteronomy 1:1 in light of Tisha B'Av. Does that make sense? So for a while, Deuteronomy is read as Deuteronomy, but at some point, once Tisha B'Av is recognized and other catastrophes befall the Jewish people, and that's commemorated on the 9th of Av, now Deuteronomy 1:1 takes on the layer of Tisha B'Av, right? Now they become associated. So the rabbis start reading the first chapter of Deuteronomy in light of Tisha B'Av. That's been going on for millennia. Millennia. Think about that. Millennia. They've been read like that. All right. What did I say we read on Tisha B'Av? Lamentations. What is Lamentations in Hebrew? It's the first word of the book. Like so often, right? Like so often the Hebrew name for the book is different from the Greek name from the book because Hebrew names the book by one of the first words of the book. The first word of the book of Lamentations is Echa. How? Said with as much tragic pathos as you can imagine. Echa. How? When we look around the Palisades, Echa. How? With our technology, with all the water, with all the super scoopers, with all the infrastructure, with Echa. How is this possible? How has this happened? How horrible. That's the sense of Echa. How? Okay? That's the first word of the book of Lamentations. Well, guess what word appears in the first chapter of the book of Deuteronomy? 3 guesses and the first 2 don't count. Echa. So there is no way the rabbis can ignore that engraved invitation to read the Echa of Deuteronomy with the Echa of Lamentations. This is Jewish study. This is Jewish holy sacred play. You cannot read those two now without reading them each informed by the other. And once you do that, what else do you have to do? You have to look for where else Echa appears. And you have to try to figure out what the divine force unfolding in this universe, capital F, means by all of these Echa citations, because they must inform each other. Or the divine wouldn't use it in all these places, right? So this is the beauty of people who really study Torah their whole lives. You're like, how much can you study? Like the texts are the texts. Because it's these layered nuances that start to enrich every word of Torah. So now you're going to have a relationship forever to the word Echa. So let's jump in and look at the first Echa, which is in the book of Deuteronomy. So we are starting at Deuteronomy 1:1, and we'll get to Echa. All right, here we go. Deuteronomy 1:1. Now remember when Deuteronomy is written. Remember? I preached on it last year. High holidays. Deuteronomy is written after the destruction of the north of Israel, right? The northern kingdom. The Deuteronomist is trying to figure out how Judah, the southern kingdom of Judah, can be spared the same fate. What happened in the north that Judah can do differently so that it too is not destroyed? And then, of course, Echa, Lamentations, is going to be after the destruction of Jerusalem. So they're not unrelated. The rabbis aren't stretching to relate Echa of Devarim to Echa of Lamentations. Ela ha-Devarim, this is why the book is called Devarim. Ela ha-Devarim, asher diber Moshe akol Yisrael be'ever har-Yarden b'midbar. So these are the words that Moshe addressed to all of Israel on the other side of the Jordan, through the wilderness in the Arava near Suf, between Paran and Tofel, Lavan, Chatzerot, and Dizahav. 11 days from Choreb to Kadesh Barnea by the Mount Seir route. It was the 40th year on the first day of the 11th month that Moshe addressed the Israelites in accordance with the instructions that God had given him for them. after he had defeated Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, and King Og of Bashan, who dwelt in Ashtaroth and Edrei, on the other side of the Jordan in the land of Moab, Moses undertook to expound his teaching. He said, "The eternal our God spoke to us at Chorev," the other name for Sinai. "You have stayed long enough at this mountain. Start out and make your way to the hill country of the Amorites and to all their neighbors in the Arava, the hill country, the Shephelah, the Negev, the seacoast, the land of the Canaanites, and the Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. See, I place the land at your disposal. Go take possession of the land that God swore to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to assign to them and to their heirs after them. Vayomer alechem. Thereupon I said to you," so Moshe's still remembering a conversation. "Thereupon I said to you, I cannot bear the burden of y'all by myself. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, has multiplied you until you are today as numerous as the stars in the sky. May Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, the God of your ancestors, increase your numbers 1,000-fold and bless you as promised." Verse 12. Echa esa tarachachem umasachem urivchem. How? Echa, how? Again, said with angst, said with agony. How can I bear, livadi, by myself, the trouble of you and the burden of you and your bickering? Pick from each of your tribes individuals who are wise, discerning, and experienced, and I will appoint them as your heads. And they answered, "What you propose to do is good." So Moshe's recounting, Devarim is recounting their history together, right? "So I took your tribal leaders, wise and experienced men, and appointed them heads over you, chiefs of thousands, chiefs of hundreds, chiefs of 50s, and chiefs of 10s, and officials for your tribes." And then he goes on to say he charges the magistrates and gives them their jobs and gives them their roles. But so what here, when we look at Echa here, what is the Echa? What's the Echa moment? What's it about?
It's about Moses' frustration with the people always complaining, so that we became the griping.
Okay, so the Echa is Moshe talking about trying to deal with this people alone, right? So he sets up the whole, by God's order, of course, sets up the whole judicial system, right? All right, so think a little deeper about that. What is Echa here? Echa here is the leadership in a vacuum doesn't work. This is Torah's wisdom saying, in Moshe's recounting all of this, Echa, how can I bear y'all by myself? That Echa is the Echa of leadership without a strong judiciary, right? Because that's the answer. The fix is the judiciary, having an independent branch that will deal with the troubles between people in a community, in a society, because one person making the rules and judging everything and deciding everything leads to Echa. And we know, because we know standing outside of Deuteronomy, we know the Deuteronomist is responding to the destruction of Israel, the northern kingdom. So the Deuteronomist is reflecting with this Echa on what did they do wrong. What's the answer? Partly, they let their judiciary erode. They did not have magistrates and judges over local courts, regional courts, and then national courts making good decisions because they were good, responsible leaders being thought partners with the ruler of the time, whoever that is, the king, right? In our case, that would be the president, let's just say. So you start to see already, right? This is deeper than Moshe complaining about the people. The Deuteronomist who wrote Isaiah, who wrote the Deuteronomic history, reflecting on the fact, putting it in Moshe's mouth, that once your courts start to crumble as places you can trust for the people to turn, for things to be adjudicated fairly, and that means developing law, not just applying law, but you have to develop. Once you have a microwave oven, how do you kosher it? You can't just take the laws of kashrut and say, oh, it says in Torah, this is how you kosher a microwave. Once you have new situations, you have to apply the law to those situations. So it's the development and the evolution of the law. The Deuteronomist is saying you have to have a strong judiciary to partner with the executive branch or you're in trouble. That's our first Echa. Tamara says, wow. Oh, but what does Torah have to do with us today? Right? Let's go. Huh? Bert?
Those judges back then travel in a wagon.
Do you want to say more about that?
I'm just wondering if there was also a question of corruption.
100,000,000%.
Yeah, okay. I mean, was it a corruption issue or an intelligence or both?
Gam the gam, right? I think the Deuteronomist would say both. Yes and yes. That once you have corruption, once you don't have trust in the system, once you don't have talent and thoughtful, wise, discerning, honest people sitting in the judge's chair, your whole civilization is in danger. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not doing a great job, but that's what the Deuteronomist is saying. That begins to unravel your civilization and uses the North as proof that they were destroyed because of this. Notice it's not because of Assyria. It's because, right, of what's happening inside the kingdom of Israel. Let's go on. So that's the kingdom of Israel. Right now, this Echa is referencing the kingdom of Israel's fall and warning Judah, you're on the same path, folks. Don't y'all think you're so different, right? Y'all are on the same path. All right, let's look at the next place we see Echa. Isaiah 1:1. Isaiah is prophesying about Judah. We just read an Echa by the Deuteronomist who's talking about the fall of the north and preaching to Judah to fix what's wrong before it's too late. We're looking at Isaiah who's talking about Judah. And in particular, of course, that is characterized by Jerusalem, the capital. The prophecies of Yeshayahu, son of Amos, who prophesied concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the reigns of Uzziah, Yotam, Achaz, and Chizkiyahu, kings of Judah. Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for God has spoken. I reared children and brought them up, and they have rebelled against me. An ox knows its owner, a donkey its master's crib. Israel does not know. My people don't think. A sinful nation, people laden with iniquity, brood of evildoers, depraved children. They have forsaken God, spurned the Holy One of Israel, turned their backs. Why do you seek further beatings, that you continue to offend? Every head is ailing, and every heart is sick. From head to foot, no spot is found, all bruises and welts, and festering sores, not pressed out, not bound up, not softened with oil, meaning not treated. Your land is a waste, your cities burnt down. Before your eyes, the yield of your soil is consumed by strangers. A wasteland as over Zion is left, like a booth in a vineyard, like a hut in a cucumber field, like a city beleaguered. Meaning the sukkah, right? That's what it's called here, a sukkah. The sukkah that's in the field and the harvest is over, right? It's useless. It's falling apart. It has no purpose. Had not God of hosts left us some survivors, we should be like Sodom and Gomorrah. Hear the word of God, you chieftains of Sodom. Give ear to your God's instruction, you folk of Gomorrah. The famous part that we read around the high holidays. What need have I of all your sacrifices, says God. I am sated with burnt offerings of rams and suet of fatlings and blood of bulls, and I have no delight in lambs and he-goats, that you come to appear before me. Who asked that of you? Trample my courts no more. Bringing oblations is futile. Incense is offensive to me. New moon and Sabbath, proclaiming of solemnities, assemblies with iniquity, I cannot abide. Meaning when the people get together to celebrate the new moon and Shabbat, your new moons and fixed seasons fill me with loathing. They are become a burden to me. I cannot endure them. And when you lift up your hands, I will turn my eyes away from you. Though you pray at length, I will not listen. Your hands are stained with crime. Wash yourselves clean. Put your evil doings away from my sight. Cease to do evil. Learn to do good. Devote yourselves to justice. Aid the wronged. Uphold the rights of the orphan. Defend the cause of the widow. Come, let us reach an understanding, says God. Be your sins like crimson? They can turn snow white. Be they red as dyed wool? They can become like fleece. If then you agree and give heed, you will eat the good things of the earth. But if you refuse and disobey, you will be devoured by the sword. For it was God who spoke. Verse 20. Echa, how? Haita lezona kirya ne'emana. How has she become a harlot, the faithful city that was filled with justice, where righteousness dwelt, but now murderers? Your silver has turned to dross. Your wine is cut with water. Your rulers are rogues and cronies of thieves, everyone avid for presents and greedy for gifts. They do not judge the case of the orphan, and the widow's cause never reaches them. Okay, so Echa, how? Tragic, yes, but also there's more, what word to use? It's disgust, right, at what's become of the city that was once filled with righteousness and courts that were just, that heard the case of the widow and the orphan and took it seriously, and now has a bunch of cronies who just want to get rich, who just want gifts and planes and presents, and people who are in this business of governing for the payoff, who don't care, not only don't care about the widow and the orphan, meaning the vulnerable with no one to protect them, let's just say the immigrant, the stranger, right? So those being shot in the streets, you're murderers. Isaiah calls them murderers. The people who are in charge, who allowed this to happen, are murderers. That's the sense of Echa here. How has this happened? How has this become Jerusalem, the once shining city of righteousness and goodness and justice? How? So it's a how of agony, just like in our first text, but of the Deuteronomist, but also a text of judgment, of disgust and disappointment and shock that it could be so degraded from what it had been. Jerusalem, Judah. Okay. The layers of Echa, right? Anybody have anything they want to add? Yes, Mehmet.
Jerusalem represents so much the civilized word to when you speak of that. I mean, it's so current, it's so actual, what you're saying. And the second thing that I want to say is, when you read the text in Hebrew, it so much resonates to me in my heart. It's different than in English. Even when you say how and when you say echa, the way you say it, although I don't understand the language, it's the language of my soul. I feel it. Thank you.
It is the language of your soul, Mehmet. Bert?
I'll just say that, we tend to think that we're so modern and so much and so different. But here we go back to first Torah, 3,000 or more, Yeshayahu. It rings so true, the human condition and how we end up. Perhaps it's happening in our country right now. Even when it wasn't happening in our country, it was happening in a different country. We're just human. I think it also is humanity that the humanness of it shines to sometimes be upset.
Thank you. The heartbreak, right? That's reflected through one person reflecting on what's happened, right? So by putting it in the mouth of Moshe, Bert, is what I hear you saying, is it gets to the personal heartbreak of Moshe witnessing this and Yeshayahu witnessing this, like what's become of their societies. ALP, go.
Also, the how is, there's simplicity to that and the open-endedness of that, which is like how just is, I was posing that question in a team meeting and people say, well, how's so academic? Can you come up with like why you don't want to, but there's something in the how that's so existential. Because on one hand, it's so simple. On the other hand, going to what Bert was saying, just there's something about the human condition. It's so simple that we come back to these patterns, yet one would think with learning and with observation that there would be an understanding of moving forward without keep coming back to the same place. So the cycle of it.
Yeah, well said, Alex. The tragic cycle of it, right? That after Deuteronomy, we have Yeshayahu. And after Yeshayahu, we have Echa, Lamentations. And after Lamentations, we have, right, we keep coming back to this. And if only you'd had this Torah study before that meeting, right, you could have said, actually, how can be a deeply existential question. And I think for our tradition, Echa is definitely an existential question, as well as a tachlis question. Like, tachlis, yes, because it outlines it. Here's what y'all have done. Here's how we got here. Your people are on the take, right? Like, so it outlines it. Your sacrifices are meaningless because you're not living lives of justice. You're cheating people. I don't need your friggin' sacrifices, says the character God. But look at how you're living. You're treating the people. Quit with your rituals and your big mumbo jumbo cathedral synagogues. Knock it off. So it's both tachlis, like concrete. Here's how we got here and what's happening that's corroding the city, the civilization from the inside. And it's also the big echa. How do we keep getting here? We have the instruction. It's right here. Betsy?
It's I'm struck by the semantics, like echa. I mean, is it used at all in contemporary Hebrew, or is it just found in the biblical language? I mean, because
what you know, the remnant of this that is in modern Hebrew is right? When you say how?
Yeah.
So echa is like,
because it's much stronger than
alas. Yes,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we don't say alas anymore.
Right.
We say bummer. So it's like that. But you know it from
Okay.
I don't know. I love an alas. I think we need to say it more and more.
I love a good alas.
I just love it.
All right,
I still use alas sometimes in my writing.
Alack and alas. Lisa?
Okay, now I'm just going to ask a quick question about that. Could you have a person in modern Hebrew say Echa? I mean, is that something that would resonate? I mean,
if they did, they would be quoting Torah.
Okay.
Meaning, yes, you could, but that person would know that Echa is in Torah and in Isaiah and in.
But somebody in a heat of extreme stress could say.
I don't think so.
No.
I don't know though. I'm not a modern Hebrew scholar, so I don't know.
Okay.
But I don't think so. It would be like us going, alas.
Yeah.
Like, even in moments of whatever, we don't go back to Shakespearean English.
Yeah.
So my other point, though, other than Echa, it's a great word, though.
It is.
Is that it almost, the whole passage also comes back to the same thing that we keep discussing for 3,000 years, which is an educated public is what keeps you inoculated from corruption, and an uneducated public, and it says it right here in the text, this is what people being ignorant and kind of acting stupidly is what leads corruption to seep in and take over.
Thank you, Lisa. That's a really important point. That's a really important point, because otherwise we can just throw up our hands and go, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm not a judge. Right? But you're right. Who is this addressed to? This is addressed to the people.
To the people.
Right? Right. And a public who cares and is going to be on fire about having a just and equitable society can control for, or there's no reason for prophecy, right? The prophet would just go, well, here's what's going to happen. But that's not what the prophet says. Though you are corrupt, and as crimson, you can be turned white as snow, right? Like that. The warning is to the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stop electing and supporting judges who are corrupt. Start protesting in the streets against ICE shooting people to death. Okay, good. Very good. Good point. All right, Susan?
Just Alexis made me think about very old team meetings, since I haven't worked and been retired about 20 years. But in team meetings, like asking why often led people to blaming. Oh, it was his fault. It was his fault. And asking how led to problem solving. Let's figure out how this happened and solve it. And that's what I love about Isaiah's quote, is he tells us how to solve the problem.
Right.
And thank you, Alexis.
All right. Remind me, I'm going to come back to Alexis's point with our final text, but we have another one to do before then. So let's get to Lamentation. All right. So the first word of the book, there it is, people. Lamentations 1:1. Echa. This is the Sepharia Community Translation. The italics are words that are not in the literal, but I actually really like this translation because you see what is in the Hebrew, the bold in the English, and then what they have to read into it in between those words to make it make sense. So for those of us who look at the English and the Hebrew, this is a really interesting translation. 1:1. Echa yashva vadad ha'ir rabati am haita ke'almana rabati vagoyim sarati b'medinot haita lamas. So again, echa, how yashva vadad ha'ir. How is it that the city sits alone, that used to be full? It sits isolated like a widow among the once great among the nations. The noble among the provinces has become a slave laborer, essentially, a sanitation end. She weeps bitterly in the night. Her tears lie undried on her cheeks, for there are none to console her among all her lovers. On the contrary, all her friends have betrayed her. They have become her enemies. The narrator here considers the reversal of fortune of Judea, the once free and innovative Judean people. Judea has been exiled, for she was unable to bear the poverty and excessive labor wrought by her vassal status. But when she attempted to settle among the nations, she found no rest. All who once trailed her have now overtaken her as she navigates between the constraints imposed on her. Right? Jerusalem was put under heavy taxation before she was destroyed. The roads of Zion are mournful, for they are now bereft of festival pilgrims. All her gates are desolate, for her elders and scholars are no longer. Her priests groan rather than chant the service. Her young women grieve rather than rejoice. Her lot is bitter rather than sweet. Her oppressors have taken the lead. Her enemies have enjoyed serenity, for Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh had her grieve for her excessive transgression. And this talks about God's departure, right? Like we talked about, the Shekhinah withdrawing from the temple and from the city. Her beautiful infants were marched into captivity before the oppressor to be exploited and to advance his interests. Likewise, all dignity departed the community of Zion. Her talented officials have become redundant, like harts that find no pasture. They too now march, depleted of strength, before those who once trailed her. Jerusalem now remembers, in her days of poverty and downtroddenness, all that she treasured in bygone times, how when her people fell into the hand of the oppressor, no one came to her assistance, how her oppressors had looked on and mocked the suspension of her grandeur. Jerusalem sinned grievously. She therefore became contemptible. All who once honored her now belittle her, for she has been laid bare. She too groaned as she became undone. Her filth was paraded on her skirt hems, for she gave no thought to her future. Is it thus surprising that she has sunk to such depths with none to comfort her? Look, O Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, at my affliction. Do you not see that the enemy has become great? Look how the oppressor has stretched his hand over all Zion's treasures. She has even witnessed nations invade her sanctuary, those whom you forbade to enter your kahal. Look how all Judea's peoples groan as they search for bread, how they must trade their treasures for food to revive their lives. Look, O Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, and consider how belittled I have become. So it goes on. It goes on and on. And so here you can see Echa personifies Jerusalem as the most, if you're going to talk in the ancient Near East about the most violatable character, you're talking about a woman who can be taken captive and have done with her whatever the captor wants. Her babies marched off in front of her into slavery. There's not a more horrific image for women or men, but I'm saying if you add that it's female, then when it says who comes into your kahal, you know what it's talking about. The enemy enters where they were forbidden to enter, right? All of that is about forced intimacy, like coming into a space that was forbidden. Yudhe Vavhe's private chamber is the Holy of Holies that's been now penetrated and corrupted by the enemy. And Jerusalem as a female character who has been penetrated, who's been raped by the enemy and brought as low as you can imagine a human being being brought. That is the tragic personification of Jerusalem, who was once envied, who was once a noblewoman with people trailing in her wake. Now, I have to say, this is one of the more poignant examples for me that resonates when I think about America 250, the country that was once the shining beacon, right? I mean, I don't know why, but the Echa text, the Lamentations text really gets me. The once admired, powerful in the best way, stander up. And look, I know we've always been, there wasn't a golden age. I'm not naive. Well, maybe, but I'm not unrealistically, glorifying America. I do believe, however, she used to be a little bit more on the side of the downtrodden. And, we were heading in the direction of making, the Statue of Liberty and, Emma Lazarus's words truer and truer and truer, at least when I was growing up, both for, African Americans. I grew up in the South, as you know, so both with the civil rights movement, then with, women's rights, then with abortion rights, then with, it just felt like we were moving in the direction of truly fulfilling the admiration that people deservedly had of our democracy and our free society. And that the judiciary was figuring out, oh, right, gays should be able to marry. That image really resonating about now she's degraded. Now, think of Cersei walking through the streets in Game of Thrones, right? With people throwing, Lee, wake up. With people throwing trash at her, with people throwing stuff at her, right? As she's humiliated. You saw, it talked about her filth is on the hem of her dress. Think about that. Her filth and everyone else's filth that she's walking. She who used to wear gowns. It's just for me, this really tragic, it's supposed to be tragic, image of America at 250. And on some levels, Israel as well. Like what's happening to our democracies. And the Echa of Lamentations is the heartbroken seeing of what's become of this once noble visage, image, reality, and just this sense of ick at how filthy it is now. Bert?
Well, at the same time, it's also the beginning of turning it from white is to say that the how is not just a meaningless question. There's an answer, and that it can be the begin. It cannot be just the oy vey, but it can also be the beginning of, okay, how did we get here and how do we get here?
Particularly for Devarim and Yeshayahu. A little less so for Echa, but yes. Okay, Alex?
I think in terms of the application to the U.S. and Israel, it's that these places were never places. They were visionary, the places. They were aspirational. Mm-hmm. And that's why we have Torah, because the creation was aspirational, creation in general. But clearly, there was a reason why Torah needed to exist, because as much as we can aspire, there's the realities of the human condition and power play and all those things. So the minute people living, are in a place of fear, there's subjugation, there's power, whether it's for the female or whomever. And so I think it's more like, this vision of the U.S., while it was certainly radical and aspirational. It was also founded in hypocrisy, right? Which you're talking about. And so I think we're just dealing constantly with the push and pull of what we aspire to as humanity and what holds us back. I mean, I just got back from Israel, and it couldn't have been. I don't think Israel in its current state has achieved, had moments in terms of high, like the U.S. has had. It's 250 years. But it's aspirational and tragic.
Thank you. And you're going to bring us to our next text. So thank you for bringing us full circle. I'm going to close with this text from Echa, Lamentations Rabbah. So remember, we have Rabbah commentary, midrashic material, early midrashic material on every book. There's Devarim Rabbah, Bereshit Rabbah. We have Echa Rabbah. So let's look at Echa Rabbah. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful midrash that goes to what Alex has been saying. 3 prophesy using the word Echa. Moshe, Yeshayahu, and Yirmiyahu. Remember, Jeremiah, Lamentations is attributed to Jeremiah. Rabbi Yehuda says the word Echa means nothing other than rebuke, atochacha. So rebuking, just as it says, how, Echa, can you say we are wise and the Torah of God is with us? Because it's not, right? So it's a rebuke, and quoting Torah to bring Echa as a rebuke word. But Rabbi Nehemiah says the word Echa means nothing other than lamentation, a kin'ah. Ready for this, people? Just as it says, and the Lord God called to the human and said, what? Ayeka. Now, if you change the vowels of Ayeka, here's Ayeka in the Hebrew. What is it? If you change those vowels, what do you have?
Echa.
Echa. Oh, what? What? What is Rabbi Nehemiah saying? To Alex's point, Rabbi Nehemiah is saying it starts in Gan Eden. It starts in Eden. It's human nature in Eden. Don't read God says to Adam after they eat from the tree, Ayeka, where are you? Take those same letters, change the vowels. There are no vowels in the Torah. Take those letters, and what are you supposed to read? What does God say to Adam and Chava after they eat from the tree? Echa.
How could you have done this?
How could you have done this? Echa, humans. I gave you everything. I gave you nature. I gave you the world. I gave you a garden filled with fruit and good things and herbs that I gave you everything. These bodies. I gave you animal companions. I gave you the sky. I gave you everything. Echa.
Because with knowledge which is what we wanted, comes stupidity too. So there you go.
So God, in Echa Rabbah, the commentary on Echa reads back into Genesis, God moaning in agony, Echa, for our proclivity, for thinking we're so smart, right? Because once we have the tree of knowledge of right between good and evil, now we're so smart that we mess it all up. We mess it all up.
What was their answer? I forget what the answer was in Genesis to that question.
The serpent made me do it.
So, that's my interpretation, is that they each then say, Adam's answer to God saying Ayeka is, I heard your voice walking around in the garden, and I was naked, and so I was afraid. Now, go back to the harlot, right? The ravished woman, captive. I was naked, I was vulnerable, and I was afraid. But naked didn't mean anything like that before they ate, right? So, Echa, God is in agony, saying, what? Naked is beautiful. You've turned it into something to be covered up and ashamed of. Shame on you, right? So, look, I'm not here to, pound that the human condition is hopeless. That's not what this shiur is about. What I'm saying is this beautiful midrash goes to Alex's point that God in the garden says Echa because it's just human nature. to want to be so crafty and so smart that we're going to figure out how I get more, how I get what I want, how I get whatever. And that means taking from somebody else. It's human nature. And as Yitz Greenberg would teach, that's why we need Torah. That's why we have Torah. That's why we study Torah. Susan, I thank you. That's kind of what I was trying to get at. Isn't it? Poor God. Poor God. I feel bad for God saying Echa. Really?
Poor us.
Poor us. Poor us. That we do this to ourselves, right? And so we're supposed to, at the 9th of Av, feel the pain and feel the sense of disappointment and indignity of allowing our democracy, our personal lives, whatever, to become this. Because as Bert said, I'll save us here. What's coming at the end of summer? The beginning of Elul. What's coming? Rosh Hashanah and Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, the 10 days of repentance. So this stuff leads directly to the month we prepare to repent. That is not accidental. This is the beauty of the tradition that we don't often learn or get taught about or talk about. All of this is about a reckoning so that when we get to the beginning of Elul, we can, as individual human beings in our own lives, in our personal lives, start really assessing where have we gone wrong? Where have we gone against our own ideals and values? And each of us as a citizen, what's our responsibility? Since we do live in a democracy, what's our responsibility as we come to Elul? But you have to sit in it first. You have to sit in the filth and the awareness of it first before you can really start to shift to say, okay, what is it we need to do to change this? What is it we need to do, as the Deuteronomists would say, to prevent what happened to the north? As people who don't want to look back and go, wow, so that 250-year experiment, that's over. That's what prophecy is about. We don't want that to happen. And so let us take the words of Echa seriously and let us figure out what it is we need to do to get ready for what it's going to take for us to do it different. Shabbat Shalom.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.